Einstein is said to have called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He may or may not have said it. The attribution has always been slightly uncertain, but the observation has survived because it points at something true. There is a mathematical phenomenon available to anyone willing to wait long enough for it, in which small amounts of time and small amounts of money, stacked faithfully on top of each other, become something the initial act gave no indication of producing. The line stays nearly flat, and then, without warning, it bends. And the people who stayed in the room long enough to see it bend are never the same. The Zohar, which is the central text of Kabbalistic study, would not have been surprised by Einstein. The sages who wrote it understood compound growth as a spiritual law long before anyone wrote an equation for it. They called the principle by a different name, but the mechanism was identical. Small, faithful, repeated acts in the right direction over a sufficient length of time do not accumulate linearly. They transform. The candle does not merely get taller. At some point, it becomes a fire. And the fire is not a bigger version of the flame. It is something different in kind. You have probably met both versions of this in your own life. The person who receives good fortune and spends it, and the person who receives the same fortune and asks a different question first. The amounts are identical. The Friday is the same. But one of them is operating under a law the other one has not yet found. And here is what I want to explore with you today. That law is not primarily a financial law. It is a spiritual one. And understanding it at the spiritual level is the only way to sustain it at the financial one. Because without the deeper understanding, the moment the line goes flat again, and it always goes flat again, somewhere in the middle of the page, most people quit. And the line was about to bend. The Zohar set the path out in 4 stages, not as inspiration, as architecture. The sequence is not interchangeable, and skipping is not permitted. The first stage is knowledge, understanding what the law is and how it works. That is what this hour is. But knowledge alone changes nothing. You can understand compound interest perfectly and still spend every bonus you receive. Knowledge without the second stage is information without consequence. The second stage is application, the thing done in the body, in actual life, before any result is visible. The candle lit before any warmth is felt. This is the stage where most people stop, because it asks you to act without proof. To plant a seed in soil that looks like dirt. To put $1 away from a paycheck that already feels short. The return is invisible at this stage. The line is flat. And the flat line, if you have not built the capacity to read it correctly, looks exactly like failure. Application kept faithfully over a long enough time becomes the third stage, transformation. You are no longer a person performing new actions. You have become a different kind of container. The vessel has been reshaped. The relationship with money, with patience, with time, has changed at the level of the body, not the mind. And it is only from this transformed vessel that the fourth stage becomes possible. Connection. The moment where the line bends, where the compounding becomes visible, where the light, which has been pouring all along, finally has a vessel large enough to hold it. Here is why this matters particularly for you. The 4 stages are paid for in a single currency, and that currency is time, walked in the right order. The young have the appetite but not the patience. They want the 4th stage in the afternoon of the first day. And the moment the line stays flat, the moment the market drops, the moment the business grows slowly, the moment the account barely moves, they exit. They blow out the candle because the warmth was slow. You have buried enough quick fixes to have stopped believing in them. That is not a small thing. That is the precise capacity this entire architecture requires. But I want to be honest with you about what interrupts the climb. Because if I let you believe the staircase is simply a matter of waiting long enough, the first serious disruption will undo everything we have just built. Compounding breaks. It breaks at a specific moment, and always in the same way, and the cause is almost never what it appears to be on the surface. It does not break at the market crash. It does not break at the bad year, the bad quarter, the failed investment. Those are the events, but the event is not the cause. What breaks the compound is the verdict that fires underneath the event. The sentence that has been waiting, perfectly patient, for exactly this kind of evidence. I knew it. I always lose what I build. This isn't for someone like me. People like us don't get to keep things like this. The event gives the verdict permission to speak, and the verdict speaks, and the person cells at the bottom, exits the position, stops the contribution, closes the account. And the line that was about to bend goes flat instead, not because of the market, because of the sentence. The Kabbalists called these the self-made traps of the path. The obstacles that appear on the climb were not placed there by the world. They were laid down by your own hand in an earlier year when you were afraid and trying to make sense of loss by deciding it was your fault. And what is the only thing that carries a person through a self-made trap? Not willpower. Willpower runs dry at exactly the wrong moment. The original premise. The premise that the world exists for your fullness, that the light is always pouring, that this line was designed to bend. The flat section of the graph is not proof you were wrong to start. It is the middle of the page. And the middle of the page is exactly where most people quit, one season before the curve. So the reset is not a new beginning. It is a return to the premise. You go back to the thing that was true before the verdict spoke. The light is pouring. The staircase is still there. You were somewhere on it when you fell. You are still somewhere on it now. The compounding did not stop. You stepped out of it. And a staircase, unlike most things you have walked away from, is still there when you come back. Here is the image I want to leave with you from the Zohar, and it is one of the oldest images in the tradition. A seed placed in the ground does not grow faster because you want it to. It does not accelerate because you check on it more often. It grows according to a law that was built into it before you planted it, and your entire role is to put it in the right soil and return. The tree that exists 30 years later does not resemble the seed that was placed in the ground. It is not a larger seed. It is something the seed never looked like at any point in its existence. It is what the seed was always capable of becoming, given time and the right conditions and the patience to stay. Compound light works the same way. Every act of knowledge applied, every choice to share rather than hoard. Every morning you return to the premise instead of the verdict. These are deposits. They do not look like much individually. They look for a very long time exactly like a flat line. And then, somewhere in the middle of the page, the line bends. And the person standing there, watching it bend, is not the same person who started. They have been transformed by the waiting. The vessel is larger, and larger vessels hold more light. So before you go, one thing. Not a plan, not a system. One compounding action. The smallest one that is true to the next stage on your staircase. If you are at knowledge, take one idea from today and write it somewhere you will see it. If you are at application, start the contribution, open the account, make the call. If you are at transformation, teach one person what you know, because teaching is the moment the vessel proves it has changed. The compound begins with one faithful act, and that act is always available, and it is always now. Follow this channel so the next deposit finds you where you are. Share this with one person whose line has been flat so long they have forgotten it was designed to bend. And leave one word below. Which stage of the staircase are you standing on right now? Knowledge, application, transformation, connection. Tell us, because where you are is where we build from next. The light compounds. It always has. The only question the Zohar ever asked about it was, did you start?